My name is Rachel, and my life changed the moment I met Alex. We both had gone through failed relationships, and perhaps that was what brought us closer. I remember how we met in a cafe where I often sat with a cup of coffee, contemplating life. Alex was the first to approach me and suggest we talk. He immediately seemed like someone who understood and supported me. Our conversations grew into something more. We shared our fears, hopes, and dreams with each other. Alex helped me overcome my insecurities, and I helped him deal with his past. Together, we started building our new life. We got married a year after we met. It was the happiest day of my life. We stood before our friends and family, vowing to love and support each other. Life seemed perfect. We discussed future plans, dreamed of children, and a house filled with happiness. Alex was my rock. He helped me develop self-confidence and supported me in everything. I tried to be the same support for him, doing everything possible to make him feel loved and valued. Our relationship was full of love and understanding. After our wedding, life with Alex became even better than I could have imagined. We often talked about the future and how we wanted to have children. We dreamed of a big house with a spacious garden where our kids could play. Alex always supported me in my dreams and aspirations, and I did everything possible to support him in his career and personal goals. Our everyday life was filled with happiness and care for each other. We enjoyed every moment spent together, whether it was cooking dinner, walking in the park, or watching movies in the evening. Alex always knew how to make me laugh and comfort me when I was feeling down. He helped me improve my self-esteem, inspiring me to achieve new heights and encouraging me during difficult times. Thanks to his support, I began to feel more confident in my work and personal life. I saw Alex grow in his career and was proud of his achievements. Together, we were an unbeatable team. I tried to be the same support for Alex as he was for me. I helped him deal with work challenges, supported him in his personal growth, and was always there when he needed me. We both knew we could rely on each other in any situation. Our life was full of love and harmony. We enjoyed every moment spent together and made plans for the future. We dreamed of children and discussed how we would raise them, what values we would instill in them. Every day with Alex was filled with joy and happiness, and I couldn't imagine a better life. I noticed that Alex came home earlier than usual, but I was already out of the house. I put on a red dress and high heels, which was unusual for an ordinary weekday. I knew it would raise questions for him, but I couldn't stop myself. This dress made me feel confident and desirable. As I walked out, I saw that Alex had left his keys on the hallway table. My heart beat faster as I closed the door behind me. I knew I was doing something wrong, but I couldn't stop. I headed to the cafe where we had arranged to meet with Mark, my colleague. Our meetings were innocent, but I didn't want Alex to know about them. At the cafe, I felt my phone vibrate. It was Alex. I picked up and tried to sound cheerful. "Hi, honey," Alex began. "How's your day? Any plans for the evening?" "Hi, Alex," I replied, trying to hide my nervousness. "Everything's fine. I just decided to take a walk and unwind a bit, thinking of stopping by a cafe for some coffee. How about you?" His voice sounded a bit tense to me, but I tried not to think about it. I knew I was lying to him, and it made me feel terrible. "Sounds great. I just wanted to check on you. See you tonight. Love you." "Love you too," I answered, hoping he wouldn't notice the falseness in my voice. When I hung up, I felt my world starting to crack at the seams. I knew I had to tell Alex the truth, but I didn't know how to do it. Our relationship was on the edge, and I feared that any of my actions could destroy everything completely. A few hours had passed since I met Mark at the cafe. We sat at a table talking and laughing. I felt alive, as if I had returned to my youth. Mark was as charming and charismatic as ever. We reminisced about the good old times, and I couldn't help but smile. At some point, I felt a fleeting excitement. Our eyes met, and I felt the same attraction as many years ago. Before I could realize what I was doing, I leaned in and kissed Mark. It was quick but intense. His lips were warm, and for a moment I forgot everything but this moment. I pulled back and looked at him. Mark smiled back at me, and I felt my heart skip a beat. It was a dangerous feeling, but I couldn't stop. At that moment, I realized that all these years I had missed him. Meanwhile, Alex, suspecting something was wrong, activated the GPS tracker in my car. He rarely used this device, but today something in my behavior made him suspicious. Alex left the office and headed downtown, following the signal from the tracker. When I left the cafe, Mark suggested going to a restaurant. We headed to Fellini's, one of the best restaurants in town. I felt excitement and anticipation growing within me. We entered the restaurant and Mark took my hand. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't resist. We sat at a table, and he proposed a toast to our old times. I raised my glass and smiled at him. At that moment, the restaurant door opened, and I saw Alex standing at the entrance. My heart clenched with fear and panic. Alex was looking straight at us, his eyes filled with pain and anger. Just as our lips met again in a kiss, Alex entered the restaurant. I didn't notice him at first, as I was engrossed in the moment with Mark. But when I opened my eyes and saw Alex standing at the entrance, I felt my world collapse. I watched as he made his way to our table. At that moment, I realized everything was out of control. Mark, noticing Alex, looked at me with surprise. Alex approached the table and, without saying a word, grabbed my hand. His gaze was cold and harsh. I knew he had figured everything out. "This is Mark, my ex-boyfriend," I mumbled, but Alex was no longer listening. When Alex approached our table, I felt a chill run through my body. He didn't say a word, just stared at us. At that moment, Mark let go of my hand and stood up, trying to say something. But Alex didn't give him a chance. With fury in his eyes, he grabbed Mark by the collar and punched him in the face. Mark fell to the floor, clutching his broken nose. I jumped up from my chair, my hands trembling with fear. Alex glared at me, his eyes blazing with anger and disappointment. I tried to say something, but the words stuck in my throat. Without saying another word, Alex turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving me standing there, stunned and terrified. Mark got up from the floor, rubbing his face. He looked at me with surprise and concern. "Are you okay?" he asked, but I couldn't answer. My mind was overwhelmed with thoughts about what had just happened. When I left the restaurant, I saw Alex driving away in his car. I knew he was heading home. A wave of guilt and fear washed over me. I understood that I should have acted differently, but it was too late. I headed home, knowing a serious conversation awaited me. When I walked into the house, Alex was already waiting for me. He stood in the middle of the living room, arms crossed over his chest. His face was hard and his eyes were cold. "What was that?" His voice was sharp as a knife. "Alex, please let me explain," I began, but he interrupted me. "Explain what? That you kissed your ex? That you lied to me?" He took a step towards me, and I instinctively stepped back. "It was just a moment of weakness," I said, trying to hold back tears. "A moment of weakness?" His voice grew louder. "That's no excuse, Rachel. You've shattered our trust." I lowered my head, unable to meet his gaze. Tears streamed down my cheeks. "I know I made a mistake," I whispered, "but that doesn't mean I don't love you." Alex sighed, his anger beginning to be replaced by disappointment and pain. "I don't know if I can forgive this, Rachel," he said quietly. "You've broken our trust, and I'm not sure I can ever trust you again." With those words, he turned and walked into the bedroom, leaving me standing in the living room, feeling the full weight of my mistake. When Alex went into the bedroom, I stood in the living room, feeling utterly empty. I knew I needed to explain, but every word I said only seemed to fuel his anger. In the silence of the room, I tried to gather my thoughts, recalling every moment when Alex and I were happy together. But those memories only made the pain stronger. A few minutes later, he returned, his face even more stern. His eyes burned, and I felt fear gripping me. "Rachel, give me your phone," he demanded, holding out his hand. "Alex, please, it was just a moment of weakness. I didn't mean to hurt you." I tried to justify myself, but he wasn't listening. "Give me the phone," he repeated, his voice like an icy wind. "No," I said, trying to stay calm. "It's personal. I don't think that's a good idea." His eyes narrowed, and he stepped closer to me. His presence was almost tangible, and I realized he wouldn't stop. "Rachel, If you have nothing to hide, why are you afraid to show me your phone? It's not what you think, I tried to explain. There's nothing there. Nothing there? Alex sneered. Then show me. I shook my head, trying to figure out how to explain. Thoughts raced through my mind about how everything could have been different if I hadn't made this terrible mistake. It's my phone, I said firmly, and I have a right to privacy. Privacy? His voice turned cold and threatening. After you cheated on me, you talk about privacy? He took a step back, his face full of rage and pain. I saw him clenching his fists, trying to keep control. If you can't prove your innocence, then our marriage is over, he said quietly but firmly. I realized I had lost him. All I could do was watch him walk away, knowing that my betrayal had destroyed our family. Alex, please wait. I tried to stop him, but he had already turned and was heading to the door. No, Rachel, his voice trembled with emotion. I can't take this anymore. You've destroyed everything we had. I stood there, feeling the world around me crumble. My heart was shattered, and I couldn't find the words to stop him. I knew that anything I said would only make things worse. When the door closed behind him, I fell to my knees and broke down in tears. All I wanted was to turn back time and fix my mistake. But I knew that was impossible. Alex was gone, and with him went my hope for forgiveness. Alex returned home late in the evening, his face twisted with anger and disappointment. I sat on the couch, feeling the tension rise with every second. He tossed his keys on the table and walked over to me. Rachel, give me your phone, he demanded again, his voice cold and determined. Alex, please, believe me. I tried to calm him. It was just a moment of weakness, nothing serious. Give me the phone, his voice turned threatening. If you have nothing to hide, show me. I shook my head, not knowing how to explain the situation. Deep down, I knew he was right, but the fear of what he would find was too great. It's my phone, and I don't have to show it to you, I said firmly, trying to keep control of the situation. So you really are hiding something? His voice trembled with anger. You lied to me, Rachel, and now you refuse to prove your innocence. He turned and stormed into the bedroom, slamming the door. I stood there, tears streaming down my cheeks. Soon he returned, his face darker than a storm cloud. You leave me no choice, he said, stepping closer to me. Before I could say anything, he snatched the phone from my hands. I tried to stop him, but he was too strong. With shaking hands, he began to scroll through my messages. What is this? His voice was filled with rage. Intimate texts with Mark? Explicit photos? I couldn't look him in the eye. He found everything, our conversations, our plans for the future, our photos. You've destroyed everything we had, Alex said quietly but firmly. I can't trust you anymore. Alex, please. I tried to stop him. It was a mistake. I didn't mean it. I love you. Love? He scoffed bitterly. Love doesn't involve cheating and lying. Our marriage is over, Rachel. I'm filing for divorce. With those words, he stormed into the study, leaving me standing in the living room. A few minutes later, I heard him call my name. Rachel, come here. His voice was filled with menace. I walked to the study, my heart pounding in my chest. He was sitting at the computer, his face contorted with anger. You think I don't know about our home surveillance system? He asked. I found everything. On the computer screen was a video of me having sex with Mark. My blood ran cold. You recorded this? His voice shook with rage. Did you really think I would never find out? Alex, I couldn't find the words. You've destroyed everything we had, he said, rising from his chair. I can't trust you anymore. I stared at the screen, unable to believe that everything was out in the open. The video showed me in bed with Mark, our bodies entwined, passion in every movement. My skin burned with shame as I realized the video had captured every intimate moment, how Mark kissed me, how his hands roamed my body, how we became one. But the worst part was the final moment, how Mark finished inside me. It was too much for Alex. His face turned pale, and he clenched his fists tighter. You let him do that? He whispered, his voice filled with pain. You really went that far? I couldn't find the words. All I could do was stand there, feeling my world crumble around me. "You've destroyed everything we had," he repeated. "I can't trust you anymore. Our marriage is over, Rachel." With those words, he walked out of the room, leaving me standing in utter shock. I realized that my actions had led to the downfall of our marriage. All I could do was acknowledge how deeply I had betrayed him. Alex wasted no time and filed for divorce the next day. We met at the lawyer's office to discuss the terms and formalities. His face remained grim, and his eyes were filled with determination. "Rachel, I want this process to be as quick as possible," he began. "We need to agree on the division of property." I nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on my shoulders. We discussed all the details: the house, the car, the bank accounts. We decided to sell the house and split the proceeds equally. This house, where we had so many happy moments, would now become part of the past. As we went through the legal formalities, Alex's voice was steady and emotionless. It was clear he was determined to sever all ties with me as quickly as possible. The lawyer explained the legal implications, and we signed the necessary documents. It felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. After meeting with the lawyer, I felt empty. We signed all the necessary documents, and now we just had to wait for the process to be completed. Soon the house was put up for sale, and we began preparing to move. Packing up our belongings was the hardest part. Every item I put into a box held a memory, a piece of our shared history. As I packed away our wedding photos, the tears finally came. I sat on the floor, clutching a picture of us on our wedding day, and sobbed. Every day I woke up with a sense of guilt and loss. Everything we had, everything we built together, was now gone. My thoughts constantly returned to the times when we were happy. I remembered the joy in Alex's eyes when we bought our first home, the laughter we shared while painting the walls, the nights we spent planning our future. It was all slipping away because of my actions. I knew my actions had destroyed our marriage, and it was hard to accept. Alex moved out first, leaving me alone in the empty house. The silence was deafening. I wandered from room to room, unable to escape the memories. The kitchen, where we had cooked countless meals together. The living room, where we had curled up on the couch to watch movies. Our bedroom, where we had shared our most intimate moments. It was all so vivid, and yet it felt like a lifetime ago. The day the house was finally sold, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. We met one last time at the lawyer's office to finalize the sale and split the proceeds. Alex was polite but distant, his eyes avoiding mine. I wanted to say something, to apologize again, to beg for forgiveness, but the words stuck in my throat. We signed the papers in silence and walked out of the office, our lives forever changed. When the house was sold, we divided the money and parted ways for good. Alex started a new life, and I tried to do the same, but deep down, I knew I could never forget this feeling of loss. Moving into my new apartment was a stark contrast to the home I had shared with Alex. It was smaller, emptier, and devoid of the warmth and love we had once known. I tried to fill the space with new furniture and decorations, but it felt hollow. I started going to therapy, hoping to find some way to cope with the overwhelming guilt and regret. My therapist helped me understand the root of my actions, but it was still hard to forgive myself. I missed Alex every day, missed the way he made me feel safe and loved. I missed the future we had planned together, the family we had hoped to start. The realization that I had thrown it all away was a constant ache in my chest. Work became my escape. I threw myself into my job, staying late at the office and volunteering for extra projects. It was a way to avoid the loneliness that awaited me at home. But no matter how busy I kept myself, the memories of Alex were always there, lurking in the back of my mind. As the week passed, I saw Alex occasionally. We had mutual friends, and sometimes we ended up at the same social events. He seemed happier, more at peace. I watched from a distance as he laughed and chatted with others, a pang of jealousy and sadness hitting me each time. He had moved on, and I was still stuck in the past, haunted by my mistakes. One day, I ran into him at a coffee shop. It was awkward at first, but we ended up sitting together and talking for a while. He told me about his new job, his plans for the future. I could see that he was doing well, and I was genuinely happy for him. But as I walked away, I couldn't help but wonder what might have been if I hadn't made those terrible choices. Starting over was harder than I had ever imagined. I dated a few times, but it was clear that I wasn't ready for a new relationship. The trust issues I had created with Alex followed me, and I found it difficult to open up to anyone. I knew that healing would take time, and I was determined to work on myself, to become a better person. In the end, the divorce taught me a painful but valuable lesson. I learned the importance of honesty and fidelity, the devastating consequences of betrayal. I would carry the scars of my actions for the rest of my life, but I hoped that one day I could find redemption and peace. After finalizing the divorce and selling the house, Alex and I went our separate ways for good. He fully immersed himself in his career, setting new goals and ambitions. I heard from our mutual friends that his career advancement was rapid, and he became one of the key employees at his company. It seemed that work became not only a distraction from his personal life, but also a source of new achievements and self-affirmation. Alex also started focusing on his personal growth. He enrolled in leadership development courses and attended communication skills workshops. He spent a lot of time at the gym, working on his body and health. Every time I heard about his successes, my heart was filled with a mixture of joy for him and pain from realizing what I had lost. I learned that Alex had started dating other women. He was charming and attractive, and it was no surprise that many women wanted to be with him. However, I also found out that he had decided never to marry again. His experience with me had left a deep scar, and he decided he didn't want to risk his heart again. My relationship with Mark, however, developed quite differently. At first, it seemed like we could start over. Mark appeared sincere and caring, and we both tried to forget our past mistakes. But it soon became clear that our problems hadn't gone away. We often fought, and our arguments became more and more heated. Mark was jealous and suspicious, and I couldn't forget that I had destroyed my marriage for him. One evening, after yet another argument, I realized that my relationship with Mark just wasn't working. We were both too broken to build something new. The decision to part ways was hard for both of us, but it was necessary. We broke up and I was left alone, realizing that my attempts to find happiness had led to even more destruction. I returned to therapy, hoping to find a way to deal with the guilt and loss. My therapist helped me understand that it was important to learn to forgive myself and move on. I started working on myself, learning to be more honest and open in relationships, but the path to recovery was long and difficult. Over time, I realized that I needed to focus on myself, my interests, and my hobbies. I returned to painting, which I had long abandoned, and it helped me find peace and joy. I started practicing yoga and meditation to learn to live in the present moment and let go of the past. I felt I could trust people again and build new relationships. But every day, I reminded myself that it was important to be honest and true, not only to a partner, but also to myself. As for Alex, according to rumors, he found his happiness in his career and new acquaintances. He remained attentive and caring, but his heart was closed to new marital bonds. Nonetheless, he was content with his life, and it gave me hope that I could one day find my own happiness. When I found out I was pregnant from Mark, I was already 3 months along. At first, I was in shock, but then I decided I had to tell him. When I finally gathered the courage and told him I was expecting a baby, he just looked at me silently. His face darkened and he quietly said, "I'm not ready for this. You decide what you want to do." After that, he left and never came back. I was left alone, feeling like my life was falling apart. My life turned into a nightmare. I tried to cope with the pregnancy and take care of myself, but loneliness and stress only worsened my condition. I decided to reach out to Alex, hoping he could understand and support me. But when I told him about my pregnancy, he coldly replied that he couldn't accept me with someone else's child. I realized he was right, but that realization only intensified my pain. One evening, while returning home, I slipped on the stairs and fell. The pain was unbearable, and I knew something was wrong. I was rushed to the hospital, but the doctors couldn't save the baby. I lost him, and it was the final blow to my already shattered world. Alex found out about what happened, and although he felt sorry for me, he understood that his decision was the right one. He continued to live his life, valuing trust, loyalty, and respect above all else. I was left alone, realizing that my mistakes had led to this destruction.